Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the BlackBrazilToday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. Now, to be honest about this material I'm going to cover tonight, in reality, I was going to do a much more lighthearted video tonight. I come across some material, and it was like making light of something that you used to hear in Brazil all the time among Black folks. Uh, I'm gonna probably get to that video maybe tomorrow or maybe even the next day. But when I came across this video, I says, okay, when you come across material that catches your eye, you have to, put them in proper order. Like which one is the most important right now? Which one do you just have to, which one is more vital to put up at that moment? And after I watched this short video, it's probably about a minute and a half, I knew I had to do something with it. Wanted to discuss this because, it's a discussion that continues to rise. It's almost like, you got this battle of the sexes going on. And it's kind of funny to me that this is going on simultaneously in Black America as well as Black Brazil. It seems like, I've gotten this idea from a number of Black men in Brazil that they just don't have the same liberty to be able to express how they feel about these situations without feeling like they're going to get canceled. When you look at YouTube and you look at the various, YouTube channels, you see a whole lot more material coming out of what they call the manosphere online. And, you have this in Brazil also, but there's this constant fear of being canceled, of getting your whole YouTube channel shut down. And I always say, as long as something is not hateful or violent towards someone or, has the intent of provoking violence against someone, then there should be a liberty of expression because that's the only way, dialogue can happen. It's the only way solutions can happen if we're willing to listen to both sides or all sides in a debate or conversation. In a couple of previous videos, I've talked about, like the rise of feminism in Brazil, particularly in the last decade. And, there are a lot of people who support the movement. There are other people who see flaws in it, other people who reject it outright. So, as I've said, my own political direction and development has gone through a number of stages where things that I once believed in, I've had to, switch up. I've had to been able to, analyze both sides of the coin. I've said this over and over, anything you believe in, you should be able to challenge your belief. And if you can't challenge it, then perhaps deep down you feel like you probably know that it's probably wrong, something that you're following. So on the other side, there's been a number of people who have been speaking out about these divisions that go on between Black men and Black women. And as I said, it's funny because it's going on in the US as well as in Brazil. So I came across this one particular video put out by this professor at the Federal University of Bahia. Again, Bahia, the northwestern state that's known pretty much as the Brazil's center of Black culture. And she made an intriguing video. It was really short. It was like a minute and a half, but she packed a lot. I guess I don't know if she was sitting in front of an audience when she said this particular excerpt of the video, but this is what I wanted to talk about today. So it's called The Black Man is Not Our Enemy. And what I call it, a Black university professor addresses divisions between Black men and women. And she's talking specifically, obviously this could apply, across North America, South America, but obviously she's speaking specifically of the situation in Brazil between Afro-Brazilian men and women. So I wanted to cover this video because as short as it was between her video and her text, I said it's absolutely something I had to cover. So let me just get directly into this video. Again, the professor's name is Bárbara Carine. She goes by the Instagram tag of uma intelectual diferentona, just like a very different intellectual. So this is what she wrote, and then the video, I'm going to play that video as we go, so you can take a listen at what she had to say. So, as I said, what I saw on her Instagram page was divided into like a minute and a half video and then a small text that went with it. So right now I'm going to just cover what she had to say. And as she's speaking in Portuguese again, I'm going to do an English overdub so you can understand what she's saying. Not in a place of segmentation, looking at the problem of women in society, not in a place of an apartment, not in a place of looking at a black man as a social enemy, because we are us. We are all part of the same scenario of problems. We share the same order of social misfortune, but from different perspectives. And if you want us to list it, we will. We are suffering more from obstetric violence. We are here as women receiving the worst salaries, right? As women in this society, as Black women, being the greatest victims of rape, as Black women, being the greatest victims of domestic violence. We are here being the greatest victims of femicide and transphobia. And the Black man is here too, being the biggest victims of abandonment on the street, being the highest rates of homeless people, being the highest rates in mental institutions, being the highest rates of incarceration, genocide, suicide. So it's not about disputing disgrace. It's about understanding, and the Black movement needs to understand this, that we are under the same order, which is our end. Okay, so you hear what that professor had to say about this whole thing. She's basically just talking about, like, why are we arguing over who is the biggest victim in Brazil? When it comes to all types of different criteria and indexes and rates in Brazil, both Black men and Black women have something to claim as being in the worst situation. So why are we arguing about this? I just want to obviously, she touched on a lot of topics that I've covered over and over again on the blackbraziltoday.com blog, 3,700 articles. So all of these articles, all of these links, pages that I'm going to show right now actually come from the blog. So feel free to go, search for these titles and you'll come up with these. This one is called the Black Man and the Myth of Male Privilege, which is something a lot of men have talked about. In this particular article, the writer, who's the writer of this article, Paulo Gonzaga, he says, when we stop to analyze where Black men are in society, we run into them in the ditches, in the trunks of police cars, in jail, on the streets, between the hands and knees of security agents, and on the streets. There is no privilege for the Black man, only frustrated attempts to exercise white male power, which we will never have. Now, what he said is something that has to be addressed, because as I've pointed this out in another video, when something is international, when something is global, there are global forces at work, at play. So you come across this term masculinidade tóxica. Obviously you can probably figure out that means toxic masculinity. And there's been a lot of debate about the validity of such a term. And in terms of exercising a type of male power, in many ways, Black men, particularly Black men in Brazil, just don't have this privilege. Black males are constantly the ones who are most victimized by either just everyday street violence or, violence from the police. Every year we have this report that comes out of Brazil that you translate a mapa de violência, or the map of violence. In 2014, it said every 23 minutes, a young Black man is murdered in Brazil. And when we think about the number of suicides among young people, we observe that Black adolescents from the age of 10 to 19 had a higher risk of suicide than white youth, 67%. Okay. She spoke about the incarceration rate. When you look in Brazil's prisons, and the prison rates in Brazil have exploded in the last 10 to 15 years, we see mostly non-white people in the prison system. Okay. what else do we have here? March against the genocide of Black people. Majority of women victimized by homicide are Black. So this goes to show that among women, non-white women are more likely to be murdered in Brazil than white women. But a statistic that I've seen, and this is a video I have to do in the future because it's totally necessary. The fact is, for the last 20 some years, Brazil is the same as any other country in the world, where you're going to find that, like 90% of the victims of homicide in Brazil are men. Okay. This is just a fact, take it or leave it, how it is. The numbers are very clear about this. This talks about the genocide of the Black Brazilian. This book was originally released in 1978 by the activist Abdias do Nascimento. Again, he's probably the most well-known Afro-Brazilian militant activist or leader. He passed away in, I think, 2011 at the age of 97. But his books were out. They were about debunking the idea that racial democracy exists in Brazil. And he coined the phrase. He said, there's a genocide of Black Brazilians. He's called it that for years, right? The loneliness of Black men who alone meet death. Now, this was an article by a guy named Roger Cipó. He's very big media influencer in Brazil, has hundreds of thousands of followers. And he's also talking about this and how it personally hit him, saying, while all the emphasis is on the struggles of Black women, nobody speaks up for Black men. And that's what he's saying in this article. In this tweet that he sent out, he says, today, an ex-girlfriend sent me a message to tell me that her uncle passed away. A dark-skinned Black man. He hadn't given anyone any news until a relative went to his house and found him dead, alone. Last year, my uncle, also a dark-skinned Black man, died at home, alone. The only ones that go out like this? Unfortunately not. That's something that I often notice when I used to go places in Sao Paulo. The very, very, very dark-skinned Black people, you don't see a lot of them in Sao Paulo. But among the population of people who are considered homeless, who might be wandering the streets, psychologically just not all there, you find, it seems to me, I could be wrong, I never looked into the numbers on this, but I always seem to find very dark-skinned Black men wandering the street homeless. What is that saying? Why is it that it's particularly darker-skinned Black men who are found on the streets? Okay, it's a question that deserves to be asked. Then you talk about Brazilian police killed 17 times the number of Blacks than American police killed in 2019. No male privilege there. Brazilian police killed 5 times more than American police. On average, they kill 6 people per day. Again, according to a study, every 23 minutes, a Black youth, or I should say a Black male, is murdered in Brazil. And women are not free from this type of statistic. What does this say? It says in the last 10 years. Now, this article is from 2015, but from 2005 to 2015, while the homicide rate of white women fell by 9.8%, for Black women, it rose 54%. So nobody's disputing that among women, it seems that Black women have it harder than white women in several different socioeconomic statistics. But it's just that when you make this comparison against the men, it's just it's shocking, the differences. Death squads and the genocide of Afro-Brazilians. So besides being killed by everyday street violence, being killed by military police in Brazil, you also have these undercover killers. Oftentimes they go through the streets with masks and hoodies on. They ride on like motorcycles, and they just indiscriminately kill people. And it just always seems to be the Black bodies that fall on the ground. Okay, a lot of people say, and a lot of reports have shown that many of these people associated with death squads are actually off-duty military police officers. Okay, so this is another thing where you see this elimination of the so-called undesirable people, and most of the time it's going to be males. Okay, there's no way around it. Speaking on the females, on the women's side, Racism begins at pregnancy. A series of reports addresses the reality of pregnant Black women, the main victims of obstetric violence. Okay, there I did a video probably a couple of weeks ago just talking about the type of care that Black women get in Brazil's medical system. This article from Renata Coutinho says maternal mortality among preta y parda, or Black and brown women, is 7 times greater than in white women, with 70.5% of all registered. Okay. What else do we have here? Okay, we just take a look at some of these numbers. Now, this is as of 2019. 812,000 prisoners in Brazil. Blacks and peripheral residents are the most affected. So that's to say, the vast majority of people who are in Brazil's prisons are either Black or from poor areas of the country, poor neighborhoods, favelas. Number of women prisoners in Brazil grows 700% in 16 years. The main reason for incarceration is drug trafficking. The color of punishment: female prisoners in nation's capital increased 3,242% since 2007. Black women are 81% of female prisoners, but only 52% of the female population. Now, again, I would never say, obviously, these statistics show, look at this next story. The imprisoned woman in Brazil is young, Black, and with low education. In one state prison, privatization coincides with prisoner increase of 624%. So the point is, Brazil's prisons have always been filled with men, but over these last, this is 2015, over these last maybe 10 to 15 years, you've seen this huge increase in women going to prison, right? But again, every time I look at a stat for women in terms of being murdered or being, even when we look at domestic violence, you'll find some numbers that you probably wouldn't believe. You look at the incarceration rate and it's like, okay, yeah, women do suffer, but not to the same degree as men do. That's just something that when you look at the numbers side by side, there's just no way around that. Okay. So continuing with what this professor said, now I want to look at the text that she wrote that went along with her video. So she writes, again, this is Professor Bárbara Carine from the Federal University of Bahia. She says, tonight I felt my brother's absence so much. Dudu Perereco was the greatest friend of my childhood and adolescence, who brought me sensitivity to laugh at the tragedy of a life marked by absences. The king of catchphrases. He taught me to love samba, to play soccer, and to fly a kite. He discovered me once at the age of 13, flipping through his, I don't know, you want to say girly magazines, or his PORN comic strips, comic books, whatever. They were hidden. And he said, he didn't tell his mother, he didn't tell their mother. And to the contrary, he told me, did you like that? You can take it, but hide it very well. So she was real cool, her brother, right? He was the first person in the world who told me I was Black when we were humiliated in a given situation. And he, 5 years older than me, told me, don't you know why we're going through this here? Because we are Black. I didn't understand anything he was saying at the time. I did not accompany him in understanding the world. So this is something that she learned from her brother, because I've said this time and time again, that a lot of Black people grow up in families where they don't discuss this issue of racism. That's only been changing, say, in the last 10, 15 years on a mass level. But growing up, a lot of people say how they just didn't have people. It wasn't a discussion that they had in their homes. But this girl was brought into understanding what it meant to be Black in Brazil. This information was passed on by an older brother. She continues, my brother, a Black man from the outskirts of Salvador, died December 8th, 2021 from alcoholism resulting from a 10-year depression. My brother was only 38 years old. He died without air, without dignity, with absolutely no privilege in being a Black man. He died there, adding to the statistics of the social group most affected by alcoholism in Brazil. I will never understand the division between Black men and Black women and vice versa. Never. We are all very bad. Very bad. Or basically, she's saying we're all in very bad conditions, situation. Why are we pointing the finger at each other and we can't find any type of unity or connection when we're all suffering under this system? So she says the excerpt from the interview I recorded this week on the Umbu podcast, which will still be aired. So let's get to the comments because a lot of people read her article and a lot of people were touched. Most of the comments that I saw offer condolences to her for what happened to her brother. Okay. So I wasn't going to cover all of those because it were just a whole lot of comments just offering condolences. But these are some of the other comments that I wanted to feature here. First comment says, I only heard truths. We need to unite as a Black community, a comunidade negra, as they call it in Brazil. Second comment, you are so right. We suffer from the same ailments. I see a Black militancy increasingly putting the Black man on the sidelines as if the cause of the pain, the suffering of Black women were the Black man. We are going to the bottom of the well. They are trying to finish us off, and this group has not yet realized it. Very powerful what she said there. It's like, who's leading us? Who's leading this this bickering between Black men and Black women in Brazil, number one? And she also mentioned something that I noticed over the years. Like, why is it that it seems that the movements in Brazil, the Black, what they call the movimento negro, the Black movement, why does it seem that you go to the meetings and the rallies and you see mostly Black women there? Like, where are the Black men? Why are they not there? What's happened to the Black male participation in the struggle? That's a question that I'm still digging for right now. Number 3 says, thank you. Listening to ailments of Black men and women was essential for us to see and know that we are at the same level of social violence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing has changed. Number 4, I'm so sorry for the loss of your brother. Your words are deeply moving, and it is evident how much Dudu Perereco meant to you and how much he impacted your life. The love, camaraderie, wisdom he shared with you is a testament to his character. His pain is a painful reminder of the systemic inequalities that Black people face every day. Alcoholism and depression do not discriminate, but we know that social economic circumstances can compound these problems and make it even more difficult to access adequate mental health care. It is truly sad that your brother has become part of such a distressing statistic. However, his pain reminds us of the importance of continuing to fight for equity, for better access to mental health, and for social justice. I agree with you. The divide between Black men and Black women only weakens us. We are all in the fight for survival and dignity, and we need to support each other. I hope you find comfort in the memory of your brother and the community around you. May his memory continue to inspire you and others to work for a more just and inclusive world. Thank you for sharing your story and for all the work you do. The 5th comment says, the Black movement understands this, but it seems that the feminist movement does not. Okay. Again, you find this undercurrent of a lot of people who are seeing a side of feminism that they don't necessarily agree with. And a lot of people have expressed the opinion, hey, the feminist movement is not what people think it is. So let's just check out what this person said. And this is a woman who said this, said the Black movement understands this, but it seems the feminist movement does not. Okay, strong words there in that one little sentence. 6th comment, I'm sorry. My father was the son of a single woman in the 60s, handed over to be raised by his grandmother, a dark-skinned Black woman. My grandmother was ashamed of her mother's color. She hid her from her beauty parlor customers. Wow, think about that for a minute. This was not even really supposed to be part of the conversation, but she's going into this issue of colorism, which is really big in Brazil. It's another conversation that's been going on in social media. Black Brazilians speaking about colorism. All right. My father could not elaborate and deal with all of this. He turned to alcohol. He even attended AA meetings for a few years, but he died at the age of 30 on my 7th birthday, crossing a busy highway, severely intoxicated. Person shared something really personal going on right there. Lost her father apparently it seems that reading through between the lines, like either he was walking or he was driving through a highway, crossing a highway, and being just very intoxicated, right? A lot going on there. This says my grandmother was ashamed of her mother's color and she hid her from beauty parlor customers. I haven't even touched on the aspect of colorism in Brazil, but it runs pretty deep as well. Number 7, I also never understood this division between Black men and women, and even more, both from their Black families. 8th and final comment, I think this division has to do with the history of Black people going through abolition and the different opportunities and male and female protagonists. Then, with the organization of the Black movement in the last century, with the exclusion of women from the leadership of the entities. Perhaps it no longer makes sense now, because today I see many more women protagonists in Black movements than men. So this person is kind of echoing what the previous comment says, right? Seeing a lot more women in these movements than men. Like, where are the men? Even in party politics, the number of Black women, at least on the left, far exceeds the number of Black men. Okay, so what is it going on the left where Black men are pulling away from, the Black Brazilian, movements and struggle, activism and, militancy? As we've seen, and again, once you understand that the left, anything coming out of the left, it's international. So there's forces that are, that are at play here, and you've seen the rise of a number of we'll say Black women institutions and entities over the last few decades, a lot of funding going around. If there are major Black male organizations in Brazil, I've never seen them. It begs the question again. A lot of Black American men have also asked the question, why is so much of the funding that seems to go to support groups seem to be, when it's directed at Black people, it seems to be directed more at Black women and ignoring the plight of Black men. And as we can see from this, I have to dig a little bit further, but this is something that I've seen and something that I've heard from a number of people who have participated in leftist organizations and movements in Brazil. Like, where are the Black men now? Anyway, let me see. I have the impression, I'm just continuing this comment, I have the impression that Black women intellectuals, for example, are more listened to and respected than Black men, especially by white people. What's going on with that? Saying, the left seems to pay more attention to what Black women are saying rather than Black males. That's a lot to unpack right there. I have to talk about that in another video. It may be a false impression, she says. I am sorry about your brother, but I firmly believe that no one dies. We just leave these bodies and this plane, and that we can communicate with those who are gone, even if we're not sure we are being heard and listening. I'm sure he's in a much better place than we are, and he's very proud of the woman you are. So, short article here, but a lot that was said. I'm appreciative that this professor can see how the divisions between Black men and Black women in Brazil is weakening, the community. There's been so many strikes against the Black Brazilian population, and now you have Black men and Black women bickering with each other. No matter how you look at it, it's like after slavery, Black Brazilians were left to their own fortunes, just thrown out, find a way, while all the jobs were given to most of the immigrants coming into the country. You had this plan of whitening the country through the promotion of miscegenation, so that Black families eventually become white or something close to white, from generation to generation. Again, you have masses of non-white men and now women going to the prison system. So there's a lot of pitfalls that you see in Brazil. And the last thing that they really need is to see a divided community between Black men and Black women. And a lot of people don't seem to realize what's going on. So big ups to this professor for speaking on this. The Black man is not our enemy. All right. That's something that we can see perhaps more women should be talking about in the United States as well. So want to know what you thought about this particular video. Drop a comment in the comment section. Love to hear from you. Definitely share this video, comment on this video, subscribe to this channel. Click on the notification bell so that you'll be one of the first to receive my videos when I put them up. And with that said, I'm going to end this video here and request that you all come back and check out my next video.